She locked the bedroom door. That's how it started. Not with a scream. Not with an argument. Just a soft click. And then she turned around, arms crossed, like a judge about to read a sentence she'd already written. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice didn't shake. Mine did. I wasn't expecting a confession. We weren't even fighting. We had just finished dinner. Frozen lasagna. She left the plate in the sink, not even rinsed, which I'd normally complain about. But tonight, I didn't say a word. She stood there like she'd been preparing for this moment for years. Maybe decades. And then, just like that, she told me, "I haven't been honest with you. Since the beginning." I didn't even ask what beginning. I just knew. You ever feel the air in your lungs just freeze? Like your body's still breathing, but it doesn't matter anymore? She sat on the edge of the bed, not next to me, just near, and she started listing off years. Years that meant nothing to anyone else. But everything to me. 1988, 1994, 2003, 2011. With each year she named, I felt my stomach twist tighter, like it was remembering something I couldn't. Because behind those years were details I never noticed. Trips she took. Phone calls she answered in the garage. A necklace I thought she lost. A missed funeral. A strange hotel charge she swore was a bank error. Turns out, none of it was random. Each of those years, she said, something happened. Something she kept hidden. And the worst part? She said it so calmly, like she was talking about misplacing receipts or forgetting to buy milk. Not secrets that cracked the foundation of a 37-year marriage. "I needed to tell you," she said. "I can't carry it anymore. And after I say it, you'll hate me." But I already did. I just didn't know why yet. What came next wasn't just betrayal. It was planned. Years in the making. And I never even saw it coming. She didn't cry. I think that's what messed me up the most. No guilt. No panic. Just a cold, quiet calm. Like she was reading from a list she memorized years ago. Like she had rehearsed this for so long that the emotions dried up. She said, "The first lie was the house." I blinked. I didn't understand. I built this house. I remember pouring concrete for the garage foundation with a borrowed mixer that broke halfway through. I remember spending 3 weekends arguing over tile colors. This house was me. My sweat, my hands, my aching back. All of it was in these walls. But she just looked at me and said, "It was never meant to be yours." That sentence. It hit like someone ripping the floor out from under me. She told me she bought the land using someone else's money. Not a loan. Not her parents. Not savings. A man she had been in contact with since before we got married. She called him Miles. I had never heard that name in my life. I felt the blood rush from my head. I asked the only thing I could manage. "Who is Miles?" She looked down and said, "He was supposed to be a one-time mistake." Her words were sharp. Surgical. No padding. No apologies. He was supposed to move to Florida. He didn't. And we kept talking. For years. She wouldn't meet my eyes when she said years. I didn't need her to. My brain was already rewriting entire memories. The calls she took on the back porch. The packages that arrived without return addresses. The time she smiled at her phone like I wasn't even there. And then she hit me with this. "He helped pay for the house, so I wouldn't feel trapped with you." I swear I stopped breathing. 37 years. And she felt trapped? She said he wasn't in her life anymore. Said he died a few months ago. That's why she was finally telling me. Because there was no one left to lie for anymore. I asked why she stayed. She said, "Because I didn't hate you." Didn't hate me. Not love. Not cherished. Just didn't hate. I thought I'd break right there. But I didn't. I nodded. Got up. Walked to the bathroom. Closed the door. And stared at myself in the mirror like I was trying to recognize who I was. She lied about the house. About the man. About the life we were building. And I knew deep down, this was only the beginning. Because she hadn't told me everything. The next morning, I walked around the house like a stranger in a museum. Every photo frame looked staged. Every piece of furniture, handpicked by her, suddenly felt like a prop. My own home felt like someone else's lie. I didn't talk to her. She didn't talk to me. But she didn't leave either. She made herself coffee, humming softly under her breath, like she hadn't just unraveled my entire reality the night before. I sat at the table pretending to read the paper, but my eyes were scanning her. How casual she was, how unshaken. Like this wasn't a collapse, just a shift. I don't know what possessed me to go to the attic. Maybe I needed air. Maybe I needed to be above all of it. But as I climbed those old wooden steps, I noticed something strange. The latch to the crawlspace door was open. Now, I've lived in this house for over 3 decades, and that door was always sealed shut. I even remember asking her years ago if we should convert it into storage. She told me it was nothing, just insulation and dead space. That was a lie. When I stepped inside, I expected dust and wires. Instead, I found a room. A full room. It wasn't big, maybe 6 by 8, but it had a rug, a small bookshelf, and a desk with folders stacked neatly. A small lamp sat in the corner, still plugged into an extension cord that trailed along the beams. I stood frozen. The air smelled different, like lavender and old perfume. And on that desk, a stack of letters. Not to me. To him. To Miles. Written in her handwriting. Dated as recently as 5 months ago. She'd been writing to him. Long after he was dead. Long after she claimed it was over. The letters weren't just romantic. They were personal, raw, revealing. She talked about me in them. About how she kept the act going. About how she couldn't stand the way I chewed my food. About how she sometimes had to drink a glass of wine just to kiss me goodnight. And then the worst line. He still doesn't know about C. I'll take that one to the grave. C. Who the hell was C? I nearly tore the room apart looking for clues. I opened every drawer, flipped every page, even ripped back the rug hoping for a hidden compartment. Nothing else. Just those letters and a journal that ended mid-sentence in June. The rest of the pages were torn out. When I came back down, she was in the kitchen, watering the plant by the window. The same plant I'd given her on our 25th anniversary. I stood in the doorway, shaking, holding one of the letters. I wanted to scream, but all I could whisper was, "What is C?" She didn't turn around. She just said, "You weren't supposed to find that room." And then, she walked out the back door, barefoot, into the cold morning air, leaving me holding a piece of paper that proved I was living in someone else's story. And I still hadn't heard the worst of it. She didn't come home that night. No call. No text. Just silence and a half-wilting plant by the window, still dripping from when she watered it before walking out barefoot into the yard like some ghost that didn't need shoes anymore. I sat at the dining table with every letter spread out in front of me like pieces to a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Her handwriting curled elegantly across the pages, emotional, poetic even, but soulless at the same time. She called him my gravity, my mirror, and once even my truest compass. I was mentioned, too, but more like a minor character. A necessary burden. A man who meant well, but never really saw her. And then there was C. That one letter kept showing up like a tick buried beneath the surface of every other sentence. I thought about telling him when C happened, but it would have destroyed everything. If he ever finds out about C, I don't know what he'll do. C is the one thing I'll never say out loud. Not even to you. I was spiraling. Who? Or what the hell was C? A child? A code? A cover-up? It was like being thrown into the final chapter of a book with no clue how the story began. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I wanted to know anymore. But I couldn't stop. At 3 a.m., I remembered the old fireproof box we kept in the closet, tucked behind dusty luggage. She always kept the keys, but she once told me the spare was hidden in the garden shed, taped behind the tool rack. I don't know why I remembered that. Maybe because I finally wanted to stop forgetting everything she said. The box was heavier than I remembered. Inside were passports, tax returns, old insurance documents. And beneath it all, a sealed envelope marked for Leonard. If I'm gone. My heart punched the inside of my chest. I sat there for 5 minutes just staring at it. The seal was cracked with age, but it hadn't been opened. Not even once. It had been waiting there. Years maybe, like a landmine with my name on it. I opened it. It wasn't a letter. It was a single-page birth certificate. I froze. The mother's name was hers. The child's name was one I'd never heard before. Born in 1990. Gender, male. Father, blank. I couldn't breathe. In 1990, we were already married, living in this house. I remembered that year. She said she had a breakdown and went to stay with her sister for a few weeks. I even drove her to the airport. She looked pale, tired. I thought it was just stress. But now I saw the dates. Her trip was exactly 2 weeks after the baby was born. C wasn't a code. C was a child. Her child. Not mine. And I had never known. I didn't sleep. Not even a second. I sat on the couch with that birth certificate in my lap, my hands shaking like I'd been poisoned. My mind kept flipping through old memories like someone frantically trying to rewind a broken tape, hoping to find where things went wrong, where the lie began, where the silence started sounding normal. The name on the birth certificate wasn't familiar. Caleb Reese Everstone. Born February 5, 1990. I said the name out loud a few times, trying to taste it, to force it to feel real. But nothing felt real anymore. My wife had a child during our marriage. A secret son. And somehow she had buried it so deeply that even 37 years of shared life hadn't cracked the surface. I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "Where are you? We need to talk. I know about the baby." No reply. Just the bubbling, suffocating stillness of a woman who had vanished from her life, like she was never part of it. But I didn't stop there. I looked through every single file in that fireproof box. Utility bills, receipts, outdated credit cards. And then, tucked behind a faded envelope labeled car title, I found an old photograph. It was folded, torn at the edges, but when I opened it up, my world tilted. It was her, probably in her early 30s, holding a baby wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Her eyes looked different. Softer. Scared. Not the Nora I knew. And standing beside her was a man I'd never seen before. Tall. Blonde. Smiling like he had everything he'd ever wanted. On the back, written in faint ink, were just 3 words: Caleb's first day. I snapped a photo of the image with my phone and fed it into a facial recognition search tool I barely knew how to use. I didn't expect anything. I mean, the photo looked ancient. But then it hit. A profile. A name. Caleb Reese. Public speaker. Tech consultant. Lives 2 states away. Married. 1 kid. Instagram full of perfect smiles and motivational quotes. He looked like me. Same ears. Same crooked smile. But he wasn't mine. And he didn't even know I existed. I found a video of him online, some conference he spoke at last year, and when I hit play, I felt sick. He opened with a joke. A joke my wife used to say all the time when we had guests over. Word for word. Her voice coming out of his mouth. And that's when it hit me. She didn't just hide him from me. She kept me from him. She gave our life, my words, my sayings, my laughter, to someone else like a stolen heirloom. He was living a version of me that I never got to be. He was raised with the pieces of my existence, just repurposed. The next morning, I packed a bag. Not because I wanted to leave her, but because I needed to see him. To look this man in the eyes and ask, did she ever mention me? Did she ever say my name? Because if she didn't, then I had never really existed at all. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just packed a small overnight bag, got in the car, and drove. 8 hours of highway and silence, eating gas station peanuts, and pulling over to crime more times than I'd ever admit. I wasn't even sure what I'd say if I found him. "Hi, I'm the husband your mother never told you about. The man who raised a ghost while you lived a real life." Every version of that conversation felt pathetic. Still, I arrived. His office was in a sleek building in a glassy tech park, the kind with smoothie bars and bike racks out front. He had a nameplate on the door, Caleb Reese, Executive Strategy Director. I stood there staring at it for a full minute, hand hovering like it was a bomb trigger. Then I knocked. He opened it himself, and it was like seeing a distorted mirror. Same posture, same tired eyes, but fresher, stronger somehow. Like he had all the same parts, but they'd been put together the right way. I said, "Hi, Caleb?" He smiled politely, like I was a delivery guy or someone selling printer toner. "Yeah?" I was frozen. My throat locked up. I couldn't say it. Not yet. So I said, "I'm an old friend of your mother's, Nora Everstone." His face changed, just for a second. Then the smile returned, thinner this time. "She passed away last week," he said flatly. "I'm guessing you didn't know." I staggered. "What?" "She had a stroke. It was fast." The world around me started spinning. I gripped the edge of the doorframe to stay standing. She was gone. No warning. No answers. Just gone. I didn't know, I stammered. "I didn't get a call. I'm her." I stopped myself. He was staring at me now, a little suspicious. "You said you were an old friend?" I nodded slowly. "We go back. A long time." He paused, then stepped aside. "You can come in for a minute." His office was clean, organized, clinical. Everything about him screamed put together. He poured us both water and sat down. I stayed standing. "She never talked much about her past," he said. "Especially that part of her life. You're one of the only people who's ever come looking." I swallowed hard. "She loved you, you know." He looked up. She told me she almost gave me up. Said there was pressure, family, shame. She was vague. Did she ever mention a man named Leonard? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. He shook his head. No, not once. Not once. And that's when it landed. Not like a punch, but a quiet, steady drop of poison. For 37 years, I was the background noise in her life. The backup plan. The convenient, quiet man she could count on to never ask too many questions. I wasn't the secret. I was the silence. He watched me for a second, then asked, "Why did you come all this way?" I opened my mouth. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to hand him the letters, the photo, the birth certificate, the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I just said, "To see you smile. You remind me of her." He nodded, unsure, polite. Then he stood, ready to end the meeting. I walked out of that building more lost than I'd ever been in my life. She was gone. And with her, the only person who knew the full truth. But something still wasn't right. Because there were two names on that old envelope. One was hers. The other wasn't mine. I couldn't drive home that night. I booked a cheap motel off the highway, the kind where the ice machine doesn't work and the wallpaper peels like it's trying to escape. I lay on the stiff mattress staring at the ceiling fan, hearing her voice in my head on loop. Not her real voice, not the one I lived with for nearly 4 decades, but the one from her letters, the one she used with him, the softer voice, the voice I never got. She was dead. That was final. No confrontation, no closure, no final fight. And yet, it felt like she was still pulling strings from the other side, still hiding things even from the grave. Back home, I opened that envelope again. The one I'd found buried in the fireproof box, the one labeled "If I'm Gone." I had only focused on the birth certificate before, the proof of Caleb's existence. But there had been another slip of paper folded behind it. I hadn't bothered to read it until now. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the page, already bracing for another hit. It was a copy of a life insurance policy. $25,000. Recipient, Caleb Reese Everstone. And next to contingent beneficiary, there was a name I didn't recognize. Delora Jennings. Not me. Not once was I listed. Not even as a backup. Who the hell was Delora Jennings? My first thought was, maybe a lawyer or some old friend. But I knew better now. Nothing in Nora's life was random. Everything was part of a carefully curated deception. So I dug. I searched online for the name. And within 5 minutes, I found an obituary from a few years back. A woman in her late 60s. No spouse. One child listed, Cara Jennings Everstone. Everstone. My stomach flipped. I searched again. Cara Jennings. Mid-30s. Public school teacher in Ohio. Quiet online footprint. Married. One child. But what stopped me cold was a blog she'd started during the pandemic, mostly about family, motherhood, and grief. The first post was titled, "The Day I Found Out My Real Father Wasn't Who I Thought." I clicked faster than I could breathe. And there it was. All of it. She never mentioned Nora by name, but the story matched. Her mother, Delora, had worked at a small-town art gallery in the late 80s. She'd had a brief relationship with a married man. He was distant, poetic, and already taken. He never claimed the child, never visited. But she kept his last name for the child as a quiet rebellion. Everstone. My last name. There was no doubt. Cara was my daughter. My actual biological daughter. And I had never known. Not because I forgot. Not because I missed the signs. But because Nora made sure I never found out. While I raised a family built on silence, while I paid the bills and fixed the pipes and memorized the sound of her footsteps coming down the stairs, she was keeping an entirely different truth sealed away. She hadn't just erased Caleb from my life. She'd erased me from someone else's. And now, with both women dead, I was the last man standing in a house built on lies. And yet, the final betrayal hadn't happened yet. That would come in the form of her will, and what she left behind. The will came by certified mail exactly 12 days after Nora's death. Thick envelope. Cold seal. No note. No explanation. Just the final stamp of her legacy pressed onto a few pages of legal wording that felt more like a final performance than any act of love. I sat at the kitchen table, the one she picked out 22 years ago, with a pen in my hand, like I needed to sign something just to give myself permission to read it. And there it was, clear as day. She left everything to Caleb. The house, the car, the bank accounts, the artwork, the gallery shares I didn't even know she still had. Not a single mention of me. Not even a thank you. I stared at that line for a long time. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My heart wasn't racing. It was like I had passed through every stage of grief and arrived at something colder, flatter. I wasn't even angry. I was just empty. But just when I thought that was the end, when I was ready to pack a bag and walk away from the ruins of a life I thought I built, I noticed something tucked into the back of the envelope. A separate letter. Handwritten. No official seal. Just my name on the front. It was from her. Not typed. Not notarized. Just ink and paper, the way people write when they're scared of being misunderstood by the machines. She started with, "If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And if I know you, you've already found the rest. You probably hate me. Maybe you should, but I hope you don't." She went on to confess everything. All of it. Caleb. Kara. The lies. The reasons. The guilt. She said she never believed she deserved my forgiveness, so she never asked for it. But then she wrote something I'll never forget. "You always gave me peace, Leonard. That was your gift. You steadied the chaos in me. And because I didn't know how to say thank you, I tried to protect you from the worst parts of me. But maybe that was another kind of cruelty. And then the part that broke me wide open. I left you nothing in the legal sense. But go to the attic. Open the blue trunk. Everything that ever mattered, everything I never said out loud, is there." I ran upstairs like a man on fire. The trunk was under an old quilt, buried behind boxes of forgotten Christmas decorations. I cracked the latch and lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of journals. Handwritten. Dated from the first year of our marriage to just a few months ago. Every page was about me. The mornings I made her laugh. The time I built her a bookshelf from scratch. The nights I stayed up holding her when her anxiety clawed at her chest. She wrote about my hands. My voice. The way I always turned on the porch light before she got home, even if it was midnight. And then I found a small locked box. Inside, there was a check. Made out to me. It wasn't millions, just enough to start over. Enough to breathe. But it wasn't the money. It was the final line on the check's memo. For the only man who ever loved me completely, even when I didn't deserve it. I broke down right there on the attic floor, holding 37 years of silence in my hands. She lied. But she also remembered. And in her own broken way, she loved me. Now I sit here, weeks later, in a small coastal town, starting fresh. I've met my daughter, Kara. She cried when I told her the truth. We talk every day now. Caleb hasn't called. Maybe he never will. That's okay. This isn't the ending I expected. But somehow, it's the one I needed.